But we also remember the times I dropped off my son Colin to see Batman by himself here one Saturday afternoon. So it's our hometown, and this is where we saw the movies.
So what's he called?
Brooklyn. Oh. Well, we found out that I was pregnant while I was on tour in America, and we was in Brooklyn when we found out.
So had you actually done it there?
No, we didn't do it there. We did it in Denmark, if you really want to know.
Hollywood has always sparkled with love stories that come and go in the blink of an eye. There, people fall in love under flashing lights and part ways right after the premiere. But amid that world, there are still quiet relationships that have lasted for decades. Not for contracts, not for fame, but for one simple reason. They truly choose each other every single day. Some overcome age gaps. Some forgive betrayals that once seemed unforgivable. Some willingly step back from the spotlight just to keep a family intact. And some only need the right ring, a sincere apology, and that's enough to stay together for life. This video will take you through the most enduring marriages in Hollywood, from the early days of courtship to how they're doing today. They may not be perfect, but they've never let go. Can a love really last for decades in such a dazzling world? And what's the secret that helped them hold on, while everyone else was falling apart? Hollywood has no shortage of fleeting romances, which is why many once bet that the love between Kevin Bacon and Kyra Sedgwick wouldn't last. That a relationship between two famous, successful people would quickly fall apart because of pressure, fame, or simply time. But 36 years later, Kevin Bacon and Kyra Sedgwick are still here, quiet, steady, and never having stopped loving each other. Kevin Bacon and Kyra Sedgwick aren't one of Hollywood's loud, showy couples, but they are a rare testament to something that seems almost outdated in this town: unconditional love. Their story didn't begin romantically or magically. It was deeply ordinary. In 1978, Kevin Bacon was performing in an off-Broadway production when a 12-year-old girl asked for his autograph. That girl was Kyra Sedgwick. Bacon remembers nothing about it, but for Kyra, it was the first moment he entered her life. Quietly, like fate. Years later, when Kyra Sedgwick landed the lead role in the TV movie Lemon Sky, she expected nothing more than a steady job. But then Kevin Bacon appeared, with his easy smile, talkative charm, and warm eyes that made her feel like she had known him forever. Her reserved nature made her keep her distance. As for Kevin, he would later admit he was instantly drawn to Kyra. She didn't come off as approachable, didn't try to get attention like others on set. That calmness, that slight aloofness, was exactly what made her stand out to him. But instead of approaching her directly, he began hosting dinners for the entire cast and crew, quietly hoping she would join. She never did. Not once. It left him disappointed, but also more intrigued. He didn't give up. He tried a different tactic. He suggested getting a massage, not a direct invitation, but a subtle hint. The massage room was next to the gym where he worked out. If their schedules aligned, maybe they could grab dinner after. Kyra wasn't convinced. She thought to herself, "I'm not going to tell him when I have my appointment." But when she walked out of the massage room, there he was, waiting, towel in hand, still sweating from his workout. She later found out he had asked the receptionist for her appointment time. A bit odd, but sincere, and enough to leave a lasting impression. "I didn't fall in love with him," Kyra recalled. "I got pulled in. A part of me wanted to run, but another part couldn't." Just weeks later, they moved in together. Kyra began to worry. It was all happening too fast. "I'd been in love before, but never felt anything like this. It was like I was losing control. Like if I didn't marry this man, I'd regret it for the rest of my life." On Christmas Eve 1987, Kevin proposed in a warm room with church bells ringing in the distance and a man reaching out for real love. Kyra said yes. It was simple, not overly romantic, but it felt warm and sincere. But 3 months later, in the middle of the night, she sat up in bed, her eyes red. Kevin was concerned. She whispered, "I don't like the ring." The ring wasn't ugly. It just wasn't what she had imagined. He simply nodded and said gently, "Then let's go choose another one. This time together." And that's exactly what they did. The new ring wasn't more expensive or more glamorous, but it was just right for her. Kira still wears it to this day. On September 4th, 1988, they had a quiet wedding. Kevin wore a pinstripe suit, Kira a high-neck lace gown with her hair in a neat bun. A simple ceremony with close friends and family. Nothing flashy like a typical Hollywood wedding. Just two people truly choosing each other, not for fame, not for appearances, but for trust. While many couples sacrifice love to pursue their careers, on their honeymoon, they decided no more birth control. 2 weeks later, Kira was pregnant. Their first child, Travis, was born in 1989. In 1992, their daughter, Sosie Ruth, was born. Their family was complete, not by plan, but by following the heart. From Pirates, Murder in the First, to Cave Dweller, The Woodsman, and Loverboy, they didn't just love each other, they acted together. On The Closer, Kevin directed Kira. He once said, "She's so well prepared, I barely have to do anything. I just call action and cut." They didn't just hold hands through love, they faced the unimaginable together. The largest Ponzi scheme in American history spared no one, not even them. Their entire career savings, tens of millions of dollars, vanished in a single December afternoon. Sedgwick recalled, "My sister called and just said, 'Are you sitting down?' I knew instantly something was wrong, and it was true, our entire savings was gone." They panicked, but then Bacon reassured her, "We still have our health, we have our kids, we have our work, that's enough." After the financial collapse, Kevin Bacon and Kira Sedgwick turned inward, to family, the one thing untouched by crisis. At the end of 2008, during a family evening of wine and conversation, Kira spontaneously suggested they should all get matching tattoos to mark their bond. Kevin later designed a symbol with 4 letters, each representing a member of their family. Not long after, the whole family went to the tattoo shop and made it happen. Kira revealed the detail at the 2012 SAG Awards. When asked about the tattoo, she simply said, "It was Kevin's design. We did it after a night with wine, and I love it." Though not tied to any anniversary, the act became a private symbol, a marker of a time when they chose to look at each other instead of outward. Around this same period, their daughter, Sosie Bacon, made her public debut as the Golden Globe ambassador at the 2014 awards. She wasn't just representing a new generation of Hollywood. Sosie showed that her artistic path would continue, in her own way and with pride. In 2018, Kevin Bacon and Kira Sedgwick celebrated 30 years of marriage with a duet video of "To Love Somebody" by the Bee Gees. Just a simple, self-recorded clip, but enough to reveal the rare harmony between two artists after 3 decades of living side by side. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit, they, like millions of other couples, faced a new reality. Staying home, no schedules, no distance. Kevin described that time as a surprise experiment for marriage. "We realized that no matter how long you've been together, personal space is still essential," Bacon shared in an interview. "My wife has her cave, the bedroom. I'm outside. We meet at dinner." They understood that lasting love doesn't come from always being together, but from being able to give each other space and still return on time. It sounds simple, but have you ever tried it? It stems from mutual respect, and that's the root of durability. Today, at an age when many couples drift into routine, boredom, and detachment, Kevin Bacon and Kira Sedgwick still tease each other like they did in the beginning. In 2022, Bacon posted a photo of a pair of lacy underwear embroidered with "I love KB" on the washing machine. A private moment, shared with playful humor. Sedgwick commented on the post, "Thanks for exposing my personal life." That same year, they joined the footloose drop trend on TikTok, a short clip of Bacon spinning his wife around their living room to the Footloose soundtrack. The moves weren't perfect, but the video quickly went viral for the joy and vitality they radiated. Amid those light-hearted moments, the couple continues their social activism. Through the nonprofit 6 Degrees, founded by Bacon, they've supported hundreds of anti-poverty and social justice organizations. At the 2022 Chapin Awards in New York, Bacon received the Harry Chapin Humanitarian Award for these long-standing efforts. To them, connection isn't about grand anniversaries, but about maintaining a shared spirit, living kindly, openly, and always smiling at the little things. In 2023, they celebrated their 35th wedding anniversary with a photo from the Lemon Sky era. "It was 1987. I met a man named Kevin," Kira wrote. Bacon simply said, 35 years like a heartbeat. In January 2024, they announced a new film project together, Connaissance. After 20 years, they were side by side again on screen. By September, they sang a new rendition of Jackson. "I like to relax when I get to relax with you." And this is why they're still together. Kira said, "We've always been each other's biggest fans, and humor is non-negotiable. Kevin only needs one thing. Taking walks together at night and talking. That's it. And it's still as wonderful as the first day. Their story isn't dramatic, and that's exactly why it feels real. No fairy tale, no sweeping romance. Just two people choosing each other, every single day, through calm and through storm. Ask yourself, how easy is that? Do you believe in a love that lasts 36 years between two A-list Hollywood stars? Which part of their story inspired you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If Kevin Bacon and Kira Sedgwick's secret to a lasting marriage lies in everyday harmony and shared laughter, then for Adriano Celentano and Claudia Mori, a couple who have been together for nearly 6 decades, what kind of love formula helped them survive so many storms, challenges, and even moments on the brink? Claudia Mori and Adriano Celentano first met in 1963 on the set of Uno Strano Tipo. Claudia was just 19, a newcomer to the acting world. Adriano was 25, already a star in both music and film, with several albums, music awards, and leading roles to his name. But contrary to the fated meeting people often imagine, their first impression of each other was far from ideal. Claudia found Adriano's boldness and slightly overbearing nature off-putting, while he was intrigued by her indifference. Celentano decided to pursue her, persistently, almost stubbornly, despite the fact that he was already engaged at the time to Milena Cantu, a fragrance consultant. During filming, an incident occurred. Claudia accidentally caused a light to explode, sending shards flying into Adriano's face. She went to apologize, and he seized the chance to ask her out for coffee. Claudia agreed but kept her distance. To her, Celentano seemed untrustworthy and unpredictable. After filming ended, they went their separate ways. Adriano set off on tour, and Claudia remained convinced that a relationship with him was a bad idea. But everything changed when she received an invitation to one of his concerts. She went, and at the end of the show, Celentano surprised the audience by singing a ballad and publicly declaring his love for Claudia in front of thousands. That moment completely changed how she felt about him. Their relationship began right after that concert. In 1964, they decided to marry, a secret wedding held at 3 a.m. just to avoid media attention. But even on their big night, they couldn't avoid small clashes. Claudia disliked the tie Adriano chose, and the moment she looked at him in exasperation was caught on camera. They argued before the ceremony. Claudia was also unhappy with her wedding dress, thinking it was too short. Yet despite it all, they exchanged vows. Starting a marriage remembered not just for its longevity, but for the resolve it took to weather so many differences. A year later, they welcomed their first daughter, Rosita, and later had 2 more children. Claudia gradually stepped away from her personal career, shifting behind the scenes to support and manage Celentano's image and productions, as his fame and demand only grew. That sacrifice wasn't a loss, but her own way of keeping her husband and family close. Sometimes their love expressed itself in strange ways. Once, Claudia tipped off the press that her husband was blocking traffic on a city street. When reporters arrived, they found Adriano dancing in the middle of the road. He said he was just rehearsing for a film scene. That scene, and his spontaneous behavior, generated buzz that made the film an immediate sensation. But no long-lasting marriage is ever all sunshine. Claudia was once dubbed the most jealous woman in Italy, though in reality, she handled things with remarkable composure. While Adriano was constantly surrounded by women, there was even a time when a fan managed to sneak into their bedroom. Claudia didn't get angry. Instead, she calmly told the press, "I feel honored that the man I love still drives women crazy like that." Their greatest storm came in the 1980s, when rumors exploded about Celentano having an affair with his co-star Ornella Muti during the filming of The Taming of the Scoundrel. Upon discovering the relationship, Claudia quietly packed her bags, took their children, and left Milan, relocating to the countryside, hundreds of kilometers away. She left only one message for the media: "An unintentional betrayal is not a reason to part ways. I can forgive. For men, shallow affairs are like a mechanic test driving a new car." Years later, Adriano Celentano admitted to the affair and publicly apologized to his wife. He returned home, and Claudia welcomed him. No drama, no revenge, just continued living, as if the wounds had been folded into the fabric of their life together without leaving scars. To celebrate their 40th anniversary, they sent handwritten invitations to friends and family. In each card, Adriano wrote only one line: "We're still madly in love." Today, the couple lives quietly in a private villa on the outskirts of Milan. They avoid parties and the entertainment scene, spending time caring for horses, playing tennis, and enjoying peaceful afternoons with their grandchildren. Recently, Celentano gifted Claudia a fountain for the garden, at the center of which stands a statue of her. They've been together for 59 years, not because they never cracked, but because they always knew how to repair. Claudia says that every night before bed she prays, "If one of us must go first, I hope it's me, because I can't live without him." As for Celentano, he still insists his heart has always belonged to Claudia. And Maury, just like in the beginning, says she's never met a man more fascinating than her husband. Claudia Maury once chose to step back behind the man she loved. She didn't keep chasing the spotlight, didn't fight for attention, didn't try to prove she was equal to her husband. But that wasn't blind sacrifice. It was a feminine kind of clarity, the wisdom to know what truly matters most in life. She chose to nurture her family, quietly stand in the background, and when that man lost his way, she simply walked away, at the right time, in the right way, and left the door open for a return sincere enough to earn it. Time has proven, the way she handled it may not be what most would do, but it was right. Had she done it differently, responded with fury or finality, that 59-year marriage might not have survived. That man might never have come back, and that love might never have gone this far. So there's no universal formula for marriage. What works for one might fail for another. To some, forgiveness is weakness. But to Claudia, it was strength. Some return out of duty. But for Celentano, it was an apology backed by action. And perhaps what people truly admire isn't just how long they've been together, but how they've held on to each other. Not through vows, but through compassion. If you're a woman, could you be as generous as Claudia was when faced with something nearly unforgivable? If you're a man, would you be brave enough to come back, make amends, and love someone again, not from the beginning, but from the place where it all fell apart? Because in the end, lasting love doesn't come from perfection. It comes from this: when everything is no longer as we wanted it to be, we still love enough not to let go. And maybe that's the kind of love that time can never take away. If Denzel Washington's looks once earned him the title of People magazine's sexiest man alive in 1996, then for Pauletta Washington, the woman who has stood by him for over 40 years, what moved her was not his appearance, but the depth of his spirit. Warm, quiet, yet unwavering. Something she felt from the very first meeting. They first met on the set of Wilma in 1977. At the time, it was Denzel's first acting role. Pauletta was already a classically trained pianist and singer, having studied at the North Carolina School of the Arts, North Texas University, and the prestigious Juilliard School. But it wasn't until a few months later, at a mutual friends party, that they really started talking. A few days after that, they happened to sit next to each other at a play. Pauletta believed it was fate. Denzel, on the other hand, said he had deliberately let it slip that he'd be attending, and Pauletta showed up. They both remember it, but in their own way. What matters isn't who's right, but that from that moment on, they never left each other's side. Their first date had a detail so cinematic it could have been scripted. Denzel wanted to impress her by taking a taxi, but didn't realize Pauletta lived so far away. As the meter kept running, he started to panic. He didn't have enough cash. In the end, Pauletta paid for the very first ride of their story. Their love didn't happen instantly. Pauletta turned down Denzel's marriage proposal, not once, but twice. It wasn't until the third time that she finally said yes. In an interview, Denzel joked, "She says it was only twice, but I've got a good memory." They married in June 1983, a simple, no-frills wedding. Too many guests, and all the food ran out. The couple ended the night at a roadside diner, eating fried eggs, and laughing together. In 1995, after more than a decade of marriage, they renewed their vows in a sacred ceremony in South Africa, officiated by Archbishop Desmond Tutu, not to draw attention, but to reaffirm one thing. They were still choosing each other after all those years. And that's what makes this marriage worth telling. Not because it's perfect, but because it's been built, piece by piece, on mutual choice. When Denzel began gaining fame with Saint Elsewhere in 1982, Pauletta had her own career on Broadway. But when she became pregnant, she made a decision. He was on the West Coast, I was on the East Coast. Where would my child be? In the air? She recalled. So she stepped out of the spotlight and chose to raise their 4 children, a decision she never once regretted. Denzel never forgot that. At every award ceremony, he always mentions her first. "You can buy a house, but you can't turn it into a home by yourself. My wife did that." And at the American Film Institute's Lifetime Achievement Award in 2019, he said, "I wouldn't have survived without Pauletta. She's the one who holds everything together. From family structure to emotional stability to the curry chicken Denzel's been eating since their earliest days. Even after stepping back, Pauletta remains a true artist." She sang on the Philadelphia 1993 soundtrack, performed in Jesus Christ Superstar, portrayed Rachel in Genius, Aretha 2021, and continues to work in theater. She is also a philanthropist, co-founding the Brain Trust of Cedars-Sinai and the Neuroscience Scholarship Program named after her and Denzel. All their children are now involved in the arts. John David, once a football player, is now a lead actor in Tenet, BlacKkKlansman. Olivia is an actress, Malcolm is a director, Katia is a producer. In 2024, the whole family collaborated on The Piano Lesson. Malcolm directed, John David starred, Katia produced, Pauletta acted, and Denzel served as producer. A filmmaking family, but above all, a family that knows how to love and hold on, with or without the spotlight. And when asked the secret behind their 40-year marriage, Pauletta gave a simple answer. There's no secret. We work. There's a lot of prayer. And a basic love. It's always there. Tom Hanks once said, "Our love isn't magical in the way it's shown in the movies." And it's true. The marriage of Tom and Rita Wilson isn't a fairy tale, but a vivid, grounded relationship built on friendship, persistence, changes, and decades of weathering life together. They first met in 1981 on the set of Bosom Buddies, an ABC sitcom. At the time, Hanks was a familiar face on the show, while Wilson only appeared in one episode. Hanks was already married. They didn't start with a romance, but with a friendship. Wilson later said that from the beginning, they clicked. "I love a good storyteller, and he always made me laugh." 4 years later, in 1985, they reunited on the film Volunteers. They played lovers on screen, and when the cameras stopped rolling, Tom Hanks knew exactly what was happening. "Rita and I looked at each other, K-boing, that was it," he told GQ magazine. At that time, Hanks was separated from his first wife, Samantha Lewis, with whom he had 2 children, Colin and Elizabeth. It wasn't until 1987 that he officially divorced, but in December 1986, Tom and Rita made their public debut as a couple at the Three Amigos premiere. Some believed his first marriage ended because of this new relationship. In later interviews, Hanks admitted his first marriage came too early, when he was too young to understand what it meant to grow within a relationship. He had his first child, Colin, in 1977 and was struggling with responsibility and a shaky career. "I don't think I was ready for marriage at that age, but I love my kids, I love my family. It's just that I didn't have the foundation yet to understand how to keep it together." In April 1988, Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson married in a simple ceremony. The bride wore a short dress, nothing traditional. "Our success comes from maturity and a willingness to be intimate," Tom told Oprah Winfrey. "When I married Rita, I knew it would require me to change." 2 years later, in August 1990, they welcomed their first child together, Chester Chet Hanks. Chet would later follow in his parents' footsteps as an actor and rapper, appearing in Empire, Shameless, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and Greyhound. In 1993, Tom and Rita acted together again, this time in Sleepless in Seattle, playing siblings. Rita once said what bonded them wasn't working together, but always cheering each other on. For example, in June 1992, Rita stood beside Tom as he received his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. In June 2006, Tom sat in the front row when Rita made her Broadway debut as Roxy Hart in Chicago. They didn't just support each other on screen. In 2002, Tom and Rita co-produced the hit comedy My Big Fat Greek Wedding and went on to make the sequel, a TV series, and other projects, with Rita often as producer or guest star. On December 26, 1995, they welcomed their second son, Truman Theodore Hanks. Unlike his older brother, Truman chose to work behind the scenes, doing cinematography, lighting, and production on major films like Black Widow, Wrath of Man, and West Side Story. Tom and Rita have never used their fame to glamorize their marriage, but when given the chance, they never hesitate to show their connection. In 2012, Rita told Piers Morgan, "We were standing at the corner of 57th and 5th in New York. Tom took my hand, looked me in the eye, and said, 'You never have to change anything to be with me.' A wave of love swept over me." That's who he is. 3 years later, that love faced a serious test. In 2015, Rita Wilson was diagnosed with breast cancer. She underwent a double mastectomy and reconstruction. Tom stood by her, caring for her every step of the way. "You never really know how your partner will respond in a situation like that," Rita shared. "But he blew me away with his kindness and care." In April 2018, they celebrated their 30th wedding anniversary with an intimate party surrounded by close friends: Oprah, Kate Hudson, Goldie Hawn, Kurt Russell, Jimmy Kimmel. Then in 2020, they faced COVID-19 together. At a time when the world was still uncertain about the pandemic, Hanks and Wilson were among the first celebrities to contract the virus. But they made it through, and they made it through together. "It was actually good to get sick at the same time," Rita said, because we understood what the other was going through. In 2022, Tom supported his wife's release of the single Songbird, a duet with Josh Groban, while Rita continued to accompany him at the premieres of Pinocchio, Elvis, and Asteroid City. In 2023, they produced and starred in the family film A Man Called Otto. Tom played the lead, Rita produced, and their son Truman portrayed the younger version of the main character. Tom joked, "I slept with the producer 365 nights to get this role." On April 30th, 2023, they marked their 35th anniversary. Rita shared a photo of a birthday cake from Tom, simply inscribed, "Happy Anniversary." 1 year later, in 2024, they walked side by side at Cannes, appearing at Masters of the Air with their 2 sons. And on April 30th, 2025, they celebrated 37 years of marriage with a poolside selfie and a note from Tom that read, "Love you, Mr. Mrs. Thank you." If Denzel and Pauletta Washington's story is a quiet testament to enduring strength, and Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson are proof of silent empathy, then David and Victoria Beckham represent something else entirely. A love between 2 wealthy, world-famous people who nearly lost each other, but chose to stay and hold hands once more. It all began in 1997, when a young Manchester United footballer was sitting in a hotel room with his best friend, watching the Spice Girls perform on TV. The one in the middle, Posh Spice, wore a sleek black dress, her gaze fierce and her smile cool and controlled. David Beckham turned to his friend and said, "I'm going to marry her." It sounded impulsive, but it would define the rest of his life. They grew up only 15 minutes apart in London, but it took a charity match at Old Trafford for fate to intervene. Victoria attended, not for football, but because her manager had suggested she meet a few names from Manchester United. At the time, David wasn't a star yet, just a promising midfielder on the rise. But to Victoria, he stood out. The only one who didn't push through the bar crowd, who wasn't loud, just quietly standing next to his parents. She was immediately struck. "I'm very close to my family, and I saw that David was too." David, meanwhile, was so nervous he couldn't bring himself to talk to her. It wasn't until the next match, when Victoria returned to Old Trafford, that they finally got a moment together in the players' lounge. They talked for over an hour, and as she left to catch her train back to London, Victoria wrote her phone number on the back of her train ticket and handed it to him. David kept that ticket, the ink still smudged from the sweat on his hands, and has kept it ever since. Just a year later, they were engaged. And on March 4th, 1999, their first son, Brooklyn, was born at Portland Hospital in London. He was the living symbol of a whirlwind love, fast, passionate, but serious, between 2 young people riding the heights of fame. A few months later, in July, David and Victoria held a fairy tale wedding at Luttrellstown Castle in Ireland. The bride wore a Vera Wang gown and an 18-karat gold crown made by the jeweler who had once designed for Princess Diana. They sat together on golden thrones, embracing not as celebrity royalty, but as 2 kids turning a dream into reality. Their family grew: Romeo, 2002, Cruz, 2005, and Harper, 2011. They had it all: fame, fortune, careers, and a picture-perfect family. But storms still came. In 2003, when David transferred to Real Madrid, Victoria stayed in England with their 2 young sons to avoid disrupting their lives. That physical distance led to emotional turmoil. Rumors of infidelity exploded, especially the scandal surrounding his alleged affair with assistant Rebecca Luz, sending shockwaves through the media. David publicly denied it, calling it ridiculous, but the damage was done. For the first time, Victoria opened up about that heartbreak in the 2023 Netflix documentary Beckham. She said, "We were against each other. It honestly felt like the world was against us." David confessed, "It felt like I was drowning." I didn't know how to go to training and pretend everything was fine. But Victoria is everything. I just knew I had to fight. And fight they did. Victoria moved to Madrid. They tried to rebuild. They welcomed their third son, Cruz. But she described that time as a nightmare. Living in Spain, not speaking the language, away from home, under constant media scrutiny, they were exhausted. Only when they moved to Los Angeles in 2007 did their lives finally begin to settle. During those years in America, David played for LA Galaxy, Victoria grew her fashion brand, and their children were raised under the sun and a welcome sense of privacy. But just as she found her peace, David accepted a short-term deal with AC Milan, a decision that left Victoria feeling disappointed. Though she still supported his career, she couldn't hide her frustration. I put in so much to keep this family together, and sometimes it felt like I was carrying it all. But once again, they got through it. They renewed their vows. David tattooed Victoria's name on his skin. Victoria made her husband the muse for her menswear line. They kept showing up together on red carpets, at charity events, at brand launches, and at their son Brooklyn's wedding. They argued, disagreed, got exhausted, but still held hands at the end of the day. In a 2024 podcast, David recalled watching the Beckham documentary with his wife. We looked at each other and wondered how we made it through all those years. But we did. And we have a beautiful family, a great life, and we're happy. And Victoria, the mother of 4, shared that her greatest joy is growing old with that man, watching their kids grow up and having the whole family still intact. To her, that's a life fulfilled, one that no longer needs to prove anything. After 27 years, David and Victoria are still side by side. And if there's anything to learn from them, it might be this. No relationship is immune to crisis, not even when you're rich, beautiful, and famous. But if you're willing to hold on, to face the hard parts, to stay silent when needed, to forgive and rebuild, then that marriage can survive. Not perfectly, but truthfully. And that makes it worth the fight. For David and Victoria Beckham, the battle wasn't just between them, it was them against the world. In 2003, when David moved to Real Madrid and Victoria stayed behind in England with their 2 young sons, physical distance slowly widened emotional cracks, separated by geography and then by emotional disconnect. Rumors of infidelity stormed in. Public opinion exploded. The name Rebecca Luz, David's former assistant, kept resurfacing like a blade cutting straight through the trust they'd worked so hard to build. Victoria would later describe that time as the hardest period of her life, not because she feared losing fame, but because she felt like they were turning away from each other. David admitted that every morning he'd wake up not knowing how to keep going, how to keep playing football, how to pretend everything was okay. But they didn't give up. David said, "We're fighters, and what we have, it's worth fighting for." They chose not to let the pain define their future, not just out of love, but out of reason, for their kids, for their family, because letting go would mean the third party wins. In the end, Victoria moved to Madrid, setting aside her rising career to protect their home. She didn't deny that she was angry with David, that it felt like a nightmare, like a full-on media circus. But she chose to stay, not out of weakness, but out of strength. Strength to move through the pain, to walk beside him instead of away from him, to protect what they had built since they were in their 20s. Maybe it's a costly lesson about distance in marriage, that when physical separation lingers too long, emotions can start to drift, and that staying together requires not just love, but reason, commitment, and sheer will to push through public scrutiny, temptations, and everything in between. Michael Douglas and Catherine Zeta-Jones. They're both Academy Award winners, icons from 2 different generations of Hollywood. Michael Douglas, the magnetic star of Fatal Attraction, and Catherine Zeta-Jones, the Welsh beauty who captivated the world in The Mask of Zorro. When they met, a 25-year age gap made headlines. But over 2 decades later, what's left is not public doubt, but a family, 2 children, countless storms weathered, and scars that nearly tore the marriage apart. This isn't a fairy tale. It's a real marriage, with cracks, repairs, and all. And that's exactly why it's worth telling. In 1998, at the Deauville Film Festival, Michael Douglas saw Catherine Zeta-Jones and was instantly drawn to her performance in Zorro. At the time, Douglas, one of Hollywood's elder statesmen, had just come out of a 23-year marriage with Deandra Luker, who had given birth to his eldest son, Cameron Douglas. The divorce was messy and expensive, leaving psychological aftershocks for Cameron. After watching Zorro, Michael asked his agent to arrange a meeting. But their first encounter didn't go as planned. Douglas boldly said, "I'm going to be the father of your children," to which Zeta-Jones coolly replied, "I think it's time you said goodnight." It could have ended there, but Douglas didn't give up. He sent roses to her film set in Scotland, where she was shooting Entrapment, along with a handwritten note, which she still keeps to this day. And she later joked, "The worst part is, he was right." They got engaged on New Year's Eve in 1999 in Aspen. That same year, their first son, Dylan, was born. And on November 18, 2000, they tied the knot in a lavish wedding at the Plaza Hotel in New York, attended by some of the biggest names in Hollywood: Tom Hanks, Brad Pitt, Whoopi Goldberg. Catherine wore a David Emanuel gown, and 3-month-old Dylan was present at the ceremony. Douglas's son from his previous marriage, Cameron, served as best man. From that moment, they became one of Hollywood's most talked-about couples. After Dylan, they welcomed their daughter, Karis, in 2003. While pregnant, Zeta-Jones won an Oscar for her role in Chicago and delivered an emotional thank you to her husband on stage. They were often seen together at major public events. During this period, both of their careers were thriving, and their home life flourished. Despite their fame, they maintained a solid partnership and focused on building a stable, loving environment for Dylan and Karis, while also staying closely involved in the life of Cameron, Douglas's eldest son, who was battling legal troubles and addiction. In 2010, Michael Douglas was diagnosed with throat cancer. Catherine remained by his side, though she later admitted that watching the strong man she loved grow frail was one of the most painful experiences of her life. Douglas endured radiation and chemotherapy and was declared cancer-free by early 2011. But the illness left a quiet rift in their marriage. Around the same time, Catherine Zeta-Jones went public with her diagnosis of bipolar II disorder. The combined weight of illness, public pressure, and Cameron's prison sentence for drug-related charges pushed their marriage to a breaking point. In August 2013, they announced a separation. For nearly a year, they were not seen together in public, and many assumed it was the end. But in early 2014, they surprised everyone by appearing together again at a public event. They began reconnecting through everyday moments, going to the theater, strolling through the city, traveling with their children. On the Ellen DeGeneres show, Michael Douglas shared, "We're not perfect, but we've come back stronger." They celebrated their 15th wedding anniversary by returning to the place where Douglas had proposed and began a new chapter, not just with love, but with reason, effort, and a more mature commitment. Together, they've witnessed their daughter's graduation, celebrated birthdays, appeared together at Cannes, in Hollywood, and at film premieres like Ant-Man and Wednesday. They've grown older, peacefully, and with deep understanding. Today, Michael Douglas and Catherine Zeta-Jones are no longer tabloid regulars. Their lives are quieter now, but richer. They celebrate birthdays together, share simple moments on social media, a kiss, a Valentine's Day message, a family getaway to Italy. In 23 years, they've walked through everything, from hospital corridors to red carpets, from near breakups to sending their children off to college. Their marriage hasn't been easy. It stood on the edge of collapse. But instead of walking away, they chose to stay. Not just for love, but for gratitude, for their children, for the courage to begin again. It wasn't fleeting passion, but the enduring commitment between two people who had been wounded and still chose each other. A long marriage isn't a miracle. It's the result of choosing one another, over and over again. And this couple has done just that, not once, but thousands of times, every single day. In a world where celebrity love often burns bright and fades fast, the marriage between Harrison Ford and Callista Flockhart is a rare exception. With a 22-year age gap and a beginning that found him at 60 and her newly a single mother, they weren't what one would call a textbook match. But over 2 decades together, through marriage, parenthood, accidents, illness, and countless red carpets, Ford and Flockhart have stayed hand in hand. They don't just live together, they live for each other, openly, honestly, and wholeheartedly. They met on January 20th, 2002 at the 59th Golden Globe Awards. At the time, Ford was twice divorced and in the process of separating from his second wife, screenwriter Melissa Matheson. Flockhart was a well-known actress from Ally McBeal and had just adopted her son, Liam. That night, neither of them expected to find love, but fate had already started moving quietly in the background. A few months later, at a party hosted at Ford's home, where actor James Marsden happened to be the awkward third wheel, they had their first real date. Marsden would later joke he was the opening act for one of Hollywood's most enduring modern romances. Within months of their first meeting, they made their relationship public at the Venice Film Festival. Things progressed quickly. They traveled together, bonded as a family, and raised young Liam side by side. Flockhart had long feared flying, but when sitting next to Ford in a private plane, she said, "I wasn't scared at all. I trust him completely." Ford, a seasoned pilot, saw in her not just strength, but deep compassion. He told Reader's Digest that Flockhart was the best mother in the world, and thanks to her, he got a second chance at fatherhood later in life. On Valentine's Day 2009, during a family vacation, he proposed. A little over a year later, on June 15, 2010, they were married in a quiet ceremony at the governor's mansion in Santa Fe, with Liam and the governor of New Mexico as witnesses. Instead of living large, they built a private, grounded life. Together, they took Liam to school, went pumpkin picking for Halloween, cooked dinner, and lived simply, like any ordinary couple. Flockhart gradually stepped back from the spotlight to focus on being a mother, while Ford continued filming, from Star Wars to Indiana Jones and beyond. But no matter where he went, he spoke of his wife with quiet pride. She wasn't just his partner, she was the one who kept their home warm and whole, away from the noise. In 2015, Ford was involved in a serious plane crash. His vintage aircraft went down on a Los Angeles golf course. Flockhart rushed to the ER and never left his side. Months later, after his recovery, she admitted the experience scared her to death, but also deepened her appreciation of his presence. From that point forward, she stopped flying with him in old planes, not out of fear, but as a decision born of care and love. When Liam left for college, Flockhart gradually returned to acting. Together, she and Ford attended events, from Cannes to the Critics' Choice Awards, Star Wars to Indiana Jones premieres. In 2023, when Ford received a Lifetime Achievement Award, he said with emotion, "I want to thank Callista, who brought purpose and meaning into my life." And Flockhart? She shared that they still play pranks on each other at home, from rubber spiders to plastic scorpions, like two kids who refuse to grow old. At 82, Harrison Ford is still working on Marvel sets, and Callista Flockhart still laughs out loud in interviews when talking about her husband's spooky antics, a private language of love between two people nearly 2 decades into their journey. They haven't written memoirs about their romance, nor do they gush on social media. But one glance, one touch, or a quiet phrase like, "I need a lot of support, and she's always there," is more than enough to show what they have is real. They didn't find each other when life was calm. Ford and Flockhart weren't perfect, but by respecting their differences, they found harmony. They didn't wait for perfection. They loved through flaws and filled the gaps with trust, patience, and being there at the right moments. As of 2025, they've been together for 23 years, 15 of those as husband and wife since their 2010 wedding. It's a long, steady path, especially in the unpredictable world of Hollywood. While Hollywood's spotlight often makes everything seem dazzling and fragile, the enduring love stories you've just witnessed are living proof that marriage, even in a world of fame and temptation, can still be a safe harbor, a place to return to. 6 couples, 6 journeys that were anything but smooth. And yet, in the face of illness, scandal, distance, and days that felt impossible to endure, they didn't let go. For them, love wasn't just emotion. It was commitment, reason, compassion, and growth. And perhaps that's exactly what kept these marriages not just intact, but more beautiful with time. What about you? Do you believe in a love that can last a lifetime through every storm and season? If these stories touched your heart, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell, because in the next video, we'll continue taking you through real-life fairy tales where love isn't perfect, but it's real enough to last.